I'm not going to tell you any stories about Burning Man because in 1978, I was going out with a girl, and her mother had gone out to the West Coast. And she came back with all these stories about the most wonderful man she'd ever met. And we were going to buy this house in Noe Valley, which, by the way, that's where the first one was built. And she said, "Are you ready to go?" And I was in Vermont, and it was getting on winter, and I said, "Yeah, we're out of here." So I was going out with the daughter. I packed up the mother in the truck with us, and we drove to San Francisco. And all along the way, every night, she'd talk to this guy for hours. It's like, who can talk to this woman for 15 minutes? I couldn't believe it myself. What the, right? But like, we get there, and the first person I meet when I get out of the truck in San Francisco is this guy, and he's got bangs. He was wearing bangs. I'm like, what the, you know? Anyway, that was Larry Harvey, okay? That's right. I was going out with the daughter. He was going out with the mother. We double dated. Now, it wasn't long before I realized that Larry needed a financial advisor, all right? No, seriously about this, right? And I'm going to make this a little shorter because I gave Jimmy a little bit of time, so I'm going to make this short. But one of the things we did was you want me to keep going? Yeah. Well, all right, so one of the things we did was I was running a punk club down the way here. It was called The Farm. It was famous, big. One of the biggest punk clubs on the West Coast. And so Larry, on me being his financial advisor, I hired him to cook the hot dogs, okay? Because I was doing the booze, and he was doing the hot dogs. So I went to pick him up one night because, of course, his car was either stolen, lost, or he didn't have one anymore. As a financial advisor, these things were very tough for me, okay? Because I have lots of cars. But anyway. So I get to his house, and he's got all these cookies, like a lot of fucking cookies. I said, "What the hell are you doing with the cookies?" He said, "Oh, that's what we're doing tonight." I was thinking, cookies and Budweiser, oh, man. And it wasn't just cookies, it was chocolate chip cookies. Have you ever eaten chocolate chip cookies and then had a Budweiser? It's freaking horrible, okay? It's freaking horrible. So we went on, we did it, you know, we served the cookies with the punks and the skinheads and the headbangers and the whole bit. And in the middle of the week, they called me up and they said, "Flashy, you gotta come in here, man, we gotta talk." So I said, "Larry, we gotta go in, it must be something really important." So I go in there, and they're all sitting there, and there's got, you know, the punks, the skinheads. It was a crazy crowd. They were all bike messengers. By the way, Larry and I were both bike messengers. We were bike messengers in the city of San Francisco, that's right, all right. So they said, "Flash, what happened to the hot dogs?" Because they were really concerned about this because they all lived on those hot dogs for the rest of the week, right? So they wanted to know where they were. And so I said, "Yeah, Larry," I said, "what happened to the hot dogs?" And he looked at me and he said, "Flash, it's impossible to cook hot dogs on a grill." And all these guys looked at me like, "What?" And I looked at Larry and I said, "Larry, I have to tell you, personally, millions of people every day cook hot dogs on a frickin' grill." Wow, what a revelation. Anyway, so Larry, up until Burning Man, and even into Burning Man, I was his financial advisor. And I think it turned out pretty well as I see it. I helped him go on the right path, you know? So, yes, you're entirely welcome. You're entirely welcome. Yeah, so there was one other story. At one point we were bike messengers in the city. I said, I was getting a motorcycle and I was making a lot more money. I said, "Larry, get a motorcycle and you're gonna make a lot more money." Yeah, so we went out and found a motorcycle. I fronted the money for the motorcycle. It was a 500 Honda or something. And he was doing good. He was doing good for like maybe 2 months. He was doing good. Then one day he hit a little bit of sand, right? And he put his feet down. And when he did, he scraped the bottom of his feet so bad that he couldn't walk for a month, and he got fired from being a bike messenger. I was like, Larry. Anyway, I'm going to introduce you to another guy. Come on up here. If nobody knows, this is Trey, this is Tristan, Larry Harvey's son. Okay?
Hello.
Yeah. Now I helped raise this boy. And what a fine boy he's become. Okay?
I'm taller.
You're taller. Yeah, you're taller. Anyway, I know you want to say something about your dad.
I do.
Go right ahead, man.
Hey. So I wasn't gonna say anything tonight, so this isn't prepared. I have no notes. I'm just gonna talk to you because I think it's important. I want to tell this story. I'm just gonna give you the truth. The way he would always give it to me and the way I gave it to him at the end. When I was a kid, we didn't have Santa, we didn't have the Tooth Fairy, because he was honest with me and he would talk to me like I was a little person and not over my head to his friends or someone else in the room. And I always appreciated that because it was an incredible amount of respect to show a child. I found my dad in his apartment in the afternoon, and 6 hours later we were in the hospital in San Francisco with close friends that were family. And the neurosurgeon came to us and he said that they wanted to perform surgery to make sure that he would survive the night. But it was my choice, and the likelihood otherwise was death. And I'd noticed already this tendency not to say things within his earshot, but he was awake that day. This is a story about the last time I saw my dad. He was alive for many weeks after that, but the last time I saw him was that night. Two separate, independent beings, conscious of one another. People, I don't know, I think maybe they assume that we're weaker than we are, but I know what kind of man he was, so I told him the truth through the whole thing. I went and I sat with him and I told him what the doctor said, what the likelihood of him living was, what would happen if we didn't do it, and I was lost in this turbulent madness, and I didn't see what was right in front of me, and I said to him, I wish there was a way I could ask you a question and you could give me an affirmative or a negative. And I looked at him, and he was looking at me like I was daft, because he could see me in this scope of vision, and he had limited control of his left hand. And he just raised his hand and looked at me, and I thought, oh shit, I missed it. Thanks, Pop. You solved that. And so that's what we used. And I explained to him what the neurosurgeons explained to me, and that was that he was in the beginning of his stroke, and they couldn't stop it. So he was going to go through it to the end, and he had some time ahead of him. Maybe the first quarter had passed. And I didn't understand what that really meant until a week or two later when I reflected on this, and I realized the story I'm telling you tonight. I explained it to him, and I asked him if he wanted to go ahead with the surgery because I needed that affirmation, I think, that he agreed with me, because all of a sudden I was making decisions for my father's life. He was here before me. I wasn't here before him. And he raised his left hand distinctly and looked at me. And there was some question about whether he understood the question, so we did it again. And he did it again, and he looked at me, and I could see him. Those of you who really knew him, those of you who loved him, you all must know about him that he had this vein of passion inside him that was deep and wide as fucking water is wet. I swear to you. He was all intensity and he believed it. And that's why all of you are here, is because he believed it 1,000%. He made it real for him and for us and for me my whole life. Fuck yeah, that's right. So we had the surgery. And I was righteous in my decision, and I felt positive. When the neurosurgeons came and they said it was a success, and without it, he would not have lived the night. That was the last time I saw my dad. He lived a little while longer, like I said, but that was his night. And I'll tell you about it. He lifted his hand after he said, yeah, he wanted to do the surgery, in my interpretation, and he held mine for quite a while, a minute or two, and it was hard. And I knew he was weak with the ordeal. And then he motioned me to the side, and my brother was there, and Stuart was there. I think Brian was there, Harley, Lightning. There were folks there with us, and he held all our hands and looked at us as we sat by the bedside, and we communed with him. And I thought about that for weeks. And then I saw it. And that's what I want to tell you tonight. I want to tell you who he was without Burning Man. Because he was my father. And he was a person, and it's a loss we all feel. But I think this might make you believe or feel a little better, because it makes me feel that way. I'm not so sure he even heard the question that night I asked him. And I don't think he was affirming my decision at all. I think he knew that that might be his last time seeing any of us. And he was making peace and saying goodbye. In fact, I'm fucking sure of it. And then I think what the neurosurgeon told me about him being in the beginning of the stroke. So he must have felt his mind going. He was an intellectual, he was an academic, he loved knowledge and ideas, and he swam in them, and he drank them down, and he spit them back up, all brand new. That's what he did. That's who he was. And he must have known that he was losing himself, you know? Like fucking your toes in the mud. He was dimming. And amidst his mind being on fire, he still had the fortitude and the strength to say to all of us goodbye while we were all still unable to see it. He was there first. And he held all our hands, and he told me he loved me when he looked at me. And I imagine that's what he said to the rest of you too. And that right there, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen anybody do. And not because he's my father, but because I don't have the words to wrap around the feeling. But that is the measure of the man we're talking about. He knew it was going, and he stood to say goodbye.
I want you to know, he,
Wait, sorry. I have one more thing. Harley, are you out there? Is Harley there still?
Harley.
Hey, you told a story earlier about my dad came in and he laid down with you. He told me that story last year. And you said you never knew how he felt about it. He told me how he felt about it, specifically. I wanted to tell you. Straight up. I'm a really private person. This is kind of outside of my character.
So cute.
No shit. But I gotta tell you though, he was talking to me about the value of other people and friendships and community. Because he was like my moral compass a little bit, more than my moral compass. He always knew what to do. And he was right. And he was telling me that people are important to keep close that you love and those who love you, because he thought I was drifting too far into the the unknown solitary. And he told me the story of when he lay down with you. The way he told it to me was, he wasn't sure that you were going to come back next year. In fact, he doubted that you would. And so he went to your tent to talk to you and found you crying and upset and just laid down with you for a long fucking time. And he got up and left, and he told me about that was probably the defining moment in your friendship. And he knew he loved you, and you were here to stay. I swear to God. That's some real shit. And me and him were both atheists, but all that I just told you tonight, that's gospel.
Yeah. Tristan. So, all right, I love you, man. I want you to know, having known the man for 40 years, 40 years is a long time. It's a long time to know somebody. And in that 40 years, he never changed. From the guy that I met the first day on the first date, literally, he never changed. He was the same person. And I didn't change either. And that's what stuck us together for 40 years. Really. And so remember this, and even what Trey was saying, friendship is something that you don't want to abuse. If you love somebody, you stick with them. Because what you've got after 40 years is history. And when that person goes, some of the history goes with you. And you'll never get it back. So enjoy every minute that you're with that person that you really want to be with. You engage with them one-on-one and be there for them at all times.